He te iwi whakapono, tēnā koutou, to the family of believers. Greetings. Welcome to you all. It's good to gather again this morning. Another Lord's Day, another resurrection celebration, and the beginning of Advent. My name's Mike Enright, if you're not sure who I am, and if you're new or visiting, a very special welcome to you. We're delighted that you're here to worship with us this morning, and I hope you feel welcome and at home. You'll see over here some candles. And as has already been mentioned, today is Advent Sunday. That's the beginning of a special 4-week period of preparation for the celebration of Christmas. Why do we need 4 weeks to prepare for Christmas? I know you're probably thinking, well, there's Christmas lists, there's presents to buy, there's food to prepare. That's not what Advent is about, actually. It's a different sort of preparation for the celebration of Christmas. The word Advent means coming. That's its literal meaning. So we've entered a season of coming. What does that mean? It's a special time for thinking about, reflecting upon, focusing on the wonderful event that is Christmas, and for preparing ourselves to appropriately celebrate this wonderful event, the coming into the world of Emmanuel, God with us. What an amazing name for Jesus. And it was spoken of hundreds of years before his birth. The prophet Isaiah recorded in the Old Testament. And this is really interesting because this was in the middle of a time when God's people, the people of Israel, were facing real difficulty. They were about to be attacked by a monster army. Nothing looked promising at all. There was no hope. And Isaiah says, I've got good news for you. And they must have thought, great! He knows another army that's going to come and save us. I've got good news for you. Unto us a child is born. Unto us a son is given. They must have thought, a baby? What use is that going to be? His name is Emmanuel, God with us. That's what use it will be. God with us. It's a stunning name for a child, God with us. And it's so important that we don't lose the wonder of that in all of the rush and busyness of these next few weeks leading up to Christmas. For hundreds and hundreds of years, about 17 centuries, Christians have been using this season of Advent as a special time to prepare themselves to celebrate appropriately, to celebrate worshipfully the coming into the world of Jesus. And if Christians ever needed such a time, it's now. In all of the other stuff that's going on, all of the other things that take our attention away from what Christmas is really all about. And, I know you'll all be busy over these next few weeks. But in all of that stuff, we need the season of Advent to help us focus on what it really means and what really matters. Oh, yeah, good. Thanks, Rick. So we have here an Advent wreath. That's one of the traditional ways that Christians have remembered what Advent is about. An Advent wreath and Advent candles. Now, the wreath is circular. And it's evergreen. Now, our evergreen is kind of slightly plasticized, but nonetheless, you get the idea. And that's to remind us about eternity, everlasting life, a circle that never ends, a greenery that never goes dry. And then the candles that we will light are candles of hope and joy and peace and love, symbolizing what this light means that has come into the world in Jesus, the light of hope and peace and joy and love. And as the candles burn down, and I'm sure you'll be glad to know that we're recycling, so that's very economically appropriate. So these are candles that have been used before, but nonetheless, as the candles burn down, it reminds us Christmas is getting closer. The waiting is nearly over. And then on Christmas Day, the white candle in the middle, the Christ candle, will be lit as a sign Jesus has come into the world. Emmanuel, God with us. We're actually thinking of 3 comings during Advent. The first coming is the first coming, when Emmanuel was born, the little baby. And we are preparing ourselves to celebrate that in an appropriate and worshipful way. The second coming, which is also part of Advent, is looking forward. We eagerly await Christ's return. He's coming back. That's the promise. That's our hope. He's coming back to restore, to renew. He's coming back for his kingdom to be fully come amongst us and all things to be the way they're meant to be. So that's the first coming and the second coming. I'll talk about the third coming a bit later. But Advent is a time of waiting, of expectation, anticipation, longing. So I encourage you, take Advent seriously this year. It's not just a name on the Christian calendar. It's got a purpose, and it's an important purpose. Prepare yourself for the most worshipful celebration of Christmas you've ever had. Today, along with Christians all around the world, we will light the candle of hope. Amihi o te tau hau, gong he fat choi, maligayang wagong teon, say he bok mani badiuseo, feliz año nuevo, yoyotoshi o makai kudasai. Or as my father used to say, Happy New Year! Now, you might think I'm a bit ahead of myself. It's the beginning of Advent. It's not the start of the new year. I'm a few weeks out. But according to Christian tradition, today, the beginning of Advent marks the start of the new year. It's not 2023, and it's not the year of the dog or the rat or the elephant, but it's the new year in terms of the Christian story. The story, of course, starts with the promise of the coming of Jesus. And so at the beginning of Advent, in Christian tradition, the new year starts as we start to once again tell and live the story. And of course, following Advent and Christmas, there's Lent, there's crucifixion, resurrection, and then comes the Ascension, Pentecost. We work through the story, and it starts today. So this is the beginning of a new year, a new start, a new life, new hope. And our key verse for Advent is, here it comes, I hope. No, what's happened? Have we got that, Ben? There it is. Romans 15:13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you put your faith in him. So that's a great Advent verse. It's got hope and joy and peace. The only problem is it doesn't mention love, which is the fourth candle. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you put your faith in him. But I think we can get around that, the fact that love is not mentioned, because the important thing to note about that is the joy and the peace are coming from the God of hope, who we know is love. So, we could put a little bracket in there. May the God of hope, who is love, fill you with all joy and peace as you put your faith in him. And of course, peace, joy, these are fruits of the Spirit. As the God who is love fills us with himself, with his Spirit, these things will naturally start to grow in us, these characteristics of the Spirit of God, as we put our faith in him. And that's our part of the transaction, if you like. That's the one thing we are asked to bring to what's going on. It's the only thing we're asked. It's the only thing we can ever actually offer to God. Faith. That's the one thing he wants for us. He wants us to trust him. And out of that flows everything else, the way we will live, the decisions we will make. May the God of hope, who is love, fill you with all joy and peace as you put your faith in him. A few years ago, I was listening to a Baptist pastor from Christchurch talking about some of his experiences, some of his learning during and following the major earthquakes in that city a decade or more ago. And he made a comment that stuck with me. He said one of the things he'd learnt was that these don't always work. No, one of the things he had learnt, can you put the next slide up? Crises can be good for you. Crises can be good for you. That really impacted me. And I realized, as I listened to him talking and as I thought about it later, crisis and hope are closely related. If everything was always cruising along smoothly, if everything was just the way you wanted it, why would you need hope? Hope is all about wanting something to be different. wanting things to change. If everything was always the way you wanted it, there would be no need for hope. Hope actually can only exist when you want things to change. Hope is only possible when you want things to be different. When you face crisis, when you experience challenge, when you're going through struggle, trial, heartache, that's when hope comes. The hope that something will be different. The hope for a changed reality, which is why crisis can be good for you. Because crisis prompts you to hope for things to be different. And that's good for you. Hoping that things will change, that things will not always be the way they are. Here's what the Bible says about hope. Craig's going to come and read us our passage this morning. It's from Romans 8, 18 to 25. The words will be on the screen. Just one thing to note. It talks in here about creation groaning. I guess earthquakes are a part of creation groaning. So that fits with what we were just talking about.
Yet what we suffer now is nothing compared to the glory He will reveal to us later. For all creation is waiting eagerly for that future day when God will reveal who His children really are. Against His will, all creation was subjected to God's curse. But with eager hope, the creation looks forward to the day when it will join God's children in glorious freedom from death and decay. For we know that all creation has been groaning, as in the pangs of childbirth, right up to the present time. And we believers also groan, even though we have the Holy Spirit within us as a foretaste of future glory. For we long for our bodies to be released from sin and suffering. We too wait with eager hope for the day when God will give us our full rights as His adopted children, including the new bodies He has promised us. We were given this hope when we were saved. If we already have something, we don't need to hope for it. But if we look forward to something we don't yet have, we must wait patiently and confidently.
Cool. Thank you, Craig. Advent is all about waiting for Jesus, waiting to celebrate Christmas, the first coming, the messianic hope, waiting for His return when all things will be made new. And the third type of waiting, which I hinted at earlier, is often we are waiting for the advent of Christ in our own lives. We're waiting for God to do something. We're waiting for things to change because life at the moment is hard. We're in a crisis. We're in turmoil. We're in pain, suffering, heartache. We cry out to God, and often we find ourselves waiting. And that's another aspect of the celebration of Advent. It's a reminder of what it's like to be waiting for God to act, waiting for Christ to come. And that's part of our human experience. And it's very much a part of what Advent is about, for Christ's intervention in our lives now. Now, the words wait patiently were used in that reading. Wait patiently. Now, that sounds like it might just be about wishful thinking. You know, I just hope something will be different. One day things will change. One day God might do something. I hope so. It's not actually what Christian hope is about. The Apostle Paul is not saying here, just sit around patiently, wishing things were different, and one day, if you're lucky, your circumstances might change. Biblical hope is confident rather than wishful because of who we put our faith in. Paul says, wait patiently and confidently. There's not just wishful thinking. We're confident that our hope will be fulfilled. Things will change because of who we put our faith in. And of course, we're called not just to wait. We're also called to act. We're called to partner with God in His purposes. We're called to be His human agents of hope, working with Him to bring about His kingdom, His reign on earth to cause the things to change the way God is working to make them change. We're called to partner with him, to be his co-workers. So here's what's involved in what the Bible means when it speaks of hope. Remember, it's not wishful thinking, as we often use the word hope. Oh, I hope I get a bike for Christmas. That's not what Christian hope, biblical hope is. Hope is waiting with patience, but also with eager expectation. That's what the word literally means that Paul uses here in Romans when he talks about waiting patiently. It's waiting with eager expectation. So yes, waiting with patience, but also waiting with eager expectation for God to act, and waiting with confidence that God is at work, even though sometimes we can't see it, even though it feels sometimes like he's forgotten. God is at work to bring about his purposes, a confidence that's based on all the evidence of God's faithfulness that we've already experienced. Waiting with patience, but with eager expectation and with confidence, based on what we know of God and his faithfulness. And therefore, working with him in accordance with his will to see those purposes come to pass. That's that balance we've talked about before, that tricky thing to understand, that paradox. It's all God's work, and yet he invites us to partner with him, to be his co-workers, to be part of what he's doing. And that's Christian hope. It's not wishful thinking. That verse in Romans 15 talks about the God of hope. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you put your trust in him. The God of hope. I think normally we think of that phrase, God of hope, as meaning God, the one who brings hope. But could it also mean that God is the one who has hope? Now that's an interesting question. Does God have hope? Is God a hopeful God? Can a God who is omniscient, who knows everything, have hope? How could you be hopeful if you know the way everything's going to turn out? Because hope means you don't really know. Can a God who knows everything be hopeful? How can you hope when you know the way things will happen? I guess that's a major existential question. But I believe God, in a way, is a hopeful God. He hopes for his children to come home. He hopes for the prodigal to return. He's a loving father who waits patiently with the arms wide open for the return of every wanderer. God is hopeful in that sense. He's hopeful as he looks at us. He's hopeful for what we can achieve, who we can become, what the outcome can be in our lives. Missionaries, by definition, are hopeful people. They go into a situation hoping to see God act, hoping to change the situation. And God is a missionary God. He's a God who has a heart for the whole world, for all people. And so, by definition, there's a sense in which he is a hopeful God. And we are all missionaries. If we're followers of Jesus, we're all called to be mission people. We don't have to go to Kolkata or Bangladesh. We're called to be God's mission people where we are. So that means we're to be people of hope. People who hope to see and to be part of changing situations in our lives, in our circumstances, in our neighborhoods, in our world. Hope is such a powerful force. The hope that things can be different. The hope that lives can change. The hope that the world can be just. The hope that there could be peace. The hope that the kingdom of God, to some significant extent, can be experienced here on earth as it is in heaven. Hope. Waiting patiently for such things to come about, but waiting with confidence that God is at work and partnering with him as he directs to bring those things about as we put our faith in him. That is hope. Wanting things to be different, trusting God that they can and will be, and working with him to bring that about. Of course, the reason that we need hope is things aren't as they should be. Things aren't the way we hope that they would be. Things aren't the way God created and intended the world to be. We're not experiencing the kingdom of God in all its fullness, God's reign where everything is full of love and light and joy. Notice how the Bible describes this current state of affairs. Here we go. It's not working again. For we know that all creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present. An interesting way to describe the way the world is. Groaning as in the pains of childbirth. I've been at a few childbirths. I love them, actually. There's nothing like a good childbirth. Man, it's a stunning experience. Now, I'm conscious that I'm not the one who's had to do all the work. But nonetheless, it's an amazing experience when you see a baby coming into the world. Now, there's lots of pain. I know that. There's lots of groaning. But there's also a lot of eager expectation and hope. One of the proudest moments of my life, and I shouldn't really talk about this because last week I told you that pride wasn't a good thing, but I have to tell you, I was proud at this moment. One of the proudest moments of my life was when our youngest daughter, Kelly, was born. And the midwife said to me, I wish I had a video of the way you cared for and supported and encouraged Lorraine through that childbirth that I could show to other expectant fathers. I felt 10 feet tall. I think that's one of the best things anybody has ever said to me. But Lorraine had done all the work. That's the truth. She had done all the work. Nevertheless, I'd done everything I was able to do to help and support her, to partner with her in the wonderful work she was doing. And together, we'd seen what we hoped for, what we eagerly waited for, come into being. The Apostle Paul says all of creation is groaning as in the pains of childbirth. Creation, everything that exists, is waiting for the birth of something new and magnificent and glorious. And Jesus has done all the work. He's done everything that needs to be done to bring that about. He has suffered. He has groaned in pain. He has endured unfathomable pain in order to bring about this new birth for the whole of creation. He has done it. And yet he invites us to stand with him, in a sense, to support and work with him, even to be midwives, if you like, as we wait eagerly for this new creation to come fully into being. New creation. The world as he intends it to be, under his good reign. And here's the Bible's description of what that will be when it finally happens. Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. That's Emmanuel. God with us. We look forward to the total fulfillment of that. And he will wipe every tear from their eyes. And there'll be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All of these things are gone forever. That is our hope. That is our confident expectation. Because we put our faith in God. And our calling is to partner with him to bring that more and more to pass. My favorite Christmas song has these words in it. A thrill of hope. I love that line. A thrill of hope. It's a physical sense when hope comes upon you. A thrill of hope. The weary world rejoices. That's the world that's in the pain of childbirth. Creation that groans can rejoice because of the thrill of hope. Why? Because yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. There's a new day coming. There's a new creation coming. a new heaven and a new earth. The weary world, our own weary lives, can experience the thrill of hope because there's something better ahead. Let's live as people with the thrill of hope in our souls, the hope that comes from knowing Emmanuel, God with us, even now. Now that's all well and good, and we've heard some wonderful testimonies this morning. But some of you are probably sitting here thinking, I don't have much hope at the moment. Life is tough. I'm enduring some pretty difficult things, and it doesn't seem that anything is changing. You know, what you say sounds good, but it's not what I'm experiencing at the moment. A few things. One is, we'd love to pray with you this morning. It's not to say that it'll make everything change, but prayer does change things. And if you want to come into the chapel after the service, there'll be people there who would love to pray with you for things to change and to stir your hope that God is at work. Secondly, I've started reading an interesting little book this week, which Helen Bullock gave me. It's called The Ultimate Christmas Wish List, and it starts off by asking you what's on your Christmas list. You know, maybe it's a pair of socks, maybe it's who knows. But it encourages you to think more deeply than that. If I could, what's my ultimate wish for Christmas? Maybe on a global scale, peace in Ukraine, freedom in Iran. Maybe on a personal scale, I long to see one of my kids come to faith. I long to see a friend healed of cancer. What are the ultimate things you hope for this Christmas? And then it encourages you to make those things known to God. This is what I'm hoping for. This is what I want to see you do. And to just continue to pray for them. You know, as Jesus said in that little parable about the man knocking on the door and his friend saying, go away, it's too late, I haven't got anything to give you. And Jesus said, even though he won't come and open the door for you because you're his friend, if you keep banging on the door, sooner or later he'll get up and he'll come down and he'll open the door and let you in because of your persistence. Jesus told that story not so we would think God is a grumpy old man who doesn't want to answer our prayers, but so we would persist in prayer because it matters. So thinking about the ultimate things that would be on your Christmas list and then persisting in prayer for them. I want to give you just a couple of moments to think about that. What would be on your ultimate Christmas list? Maybe 2 or 3 things on a kind of a global scale and 2 or 3 things on a personal level. Make your ultimate Christmas wish list now. You may want to write it on your phone, and I'm going to come around with paper and pen if you want to do a physical writing down. But make your ultimate Christmas wish list now and then commit over coming weeks and months to pray, to persevere that these things would come to pass.